There is a strange loneliness that comes when you realize kindness does not always protect you from rejection. You offer warmth and receive coldness. You speak gently and are met with resistance, and slowly a question begins to echo inside you. Why do people seem to hate me, even when I have done nothing but be kind? Carl Jung once suggested that what we meet in others is often a mirror of what remains unseen within ourselves. You see, human relationships are not only built on what is said or done, they are shaped by the invisible world of projections, shadows, and silent insecurities. When you walk into a room carrying sincerity, you do not only reveal your light, you also awaken the darkness others struggle to hide from themselves. Kindness, paradoxically, can become a mirror too honest for some people to face. Your patience may remind them of their impatience. Your calm may expose their inner chaos, and without realizing it, they may resist you, not because of who you are, but because of what you unconsciously reflect back to them. So today, we are not simply talking about hate. We are exploring the psychology of projection, the burden of authenticity, and the quiet tension between the persona we show the world and the shadow we keep buried. Because sometimes, the question is not, why do they dislike me, but rather, what is being awakened within them when they encounter me? Let us begin. There is a quiet tension that arises when a person who has cultivated inner stillness enters a space filled with restless minds. It is rarely spoken about openly, yet it can be felt in the subtle shifts of tone, the guarded glances, the inexplicable distance that forms without a clear reason. Your calm presence, which you may believe is harmless or even comforting, can become an unspoken disturbance to those who live in constant dialogue with their own unresolved conflicts. This is not because peace itself is offensive, but because it reveals a contrast too sharp for some to tolerate without discomfort. Carl Jung observed that individuals often encounter in others the disowned aspects of themselves. When someone meets a person who moves through the world with patience, composure, or quiet confidence, it can unconsciously illuminate the turbulence within their own psyche. The human ego, designed to preserve a sense of stability, may interpret this contrast as a threat. Rather than confronting the inner chaos it has long avoided, it may project irritation, skepticism, or even hostility outward. In this way, your calm becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready to look into it. Many people carry an inner narrative that life must feel heavy, urgent, or dramatic to be meaningful. When they encounter someone who does not appear governed by that same urgency, it disrupts the unspoken agreement that suffering is the natural state of existence. Your stillness questions their habits without a single word being spoken. It suggests that another way of being is possible, and that suggestion alone can provoke resistance. The psyche often defends its familiar patterns, even when those patterns cause pain, because familiarity offers the illusion of safety. Envy does not always appear as obvious jealousy. It often disguises itself as criticism, dismissal, or subtle withdrawal. Someone may say that you seem detached, naive, or too idealistic, when in truth they are grappling with the discomfort of witnessing a version of themselves they have not yet allowed to emerge. Your calm challenges the narrative they have built about who they must be to survive. And when a person's identity is built upon struggle, witnessing ease can feel like an accusation. Jung described the shadow as the collection of traits and potentials that an individual represses because they do not fit the persona they present to the world. Peacefulness, gentleness, or emotional balance can become shadow qualities for those who were taught that strength must look harsh or defensive. When they encounter you, they do not simply see your behavior, they confront the possibility that they have abandoned parts of themselves. This confrontation does not always feel liberating. More often it feels unsettling because it calls into question years of psychological adaptation. Your calm may also interrupt social hierarchies that are built on emotional reactivity. In many environments, intensity is mistaken for authority. The loudest voice, the sharpest reaction, or the most dramatic presence tends to dominate attention. When you respond slowly, listen deeply, or refuse to escalate conflict, it subtly challenges the unspoken rules of engagement. Others may feel that you are undermining the emotional rhythm they rely on to maintain control. Without realizing it, they may interpret your composure as a refusal to participate in the emotional economy of the group. There is also a paradox within kindness and peace. They require a certain inner strength that is not always recognized at first glance. Some people equate calmness with weakness because they have learned to associate power with aggression or urgency. When you remain steady in situations where others feel overwhelmed, it disrupts their assumptions about what strength looks like. Instead of admiring this difference, they may attempt to reduce it, questioning your motives or assuming you are hiding something beneath the surface. The psyche resists change by clinging to familiar emotional patterns. If someone has grown accustomed to conflict, drama becomes a form of psychological nourishment. It reinforces their identity and validates their worldview. Your peaceful presence removes the usual triggers they rely on, leaving them face to face with their own thoughts. Silence can feel louder than noise to a person who has never learned to sit comfortably with themselves. In that silence, unresolved fears and doubts begin to rise, and rather than acknowledging this inner movement, they may associate the discomfort with you. Projection often functions as a defense against self-reflection. When individuals sense qualities in another person that they admire but feel unable to embody, they may unconsciously devalue those qualities to protect their self-image. They might claim that calm people are unrealistic, emotionally distant, or lacking ambition. These judgments rarely reflect the truth of your character. Instead, they reveal the internal struggle of the observer. The more stable your presence appears, the more it confronts the instability they work hard to conceal. It is important to recognize that envy of inner peace does not always arise from malice. Often, it is rooted in longing. The person who reacts coldly to your calm may secretly desire the same sense of balance but feel uncertain about how to achieve it. Your presence becomes a reminder of an unmet need, and unmet needs can evoke both admiration and resentment at the same time. The psyche struggles to reconcile these opposing feelings, and the result may manifest as subtle hostility. Your calm also shifts the dynamic of emotional validation. In many social interactions, people unconsciously seek others who will reinforce their emotional state. If someone approaches you while agitated and you respond with steadiness rather than matching their intensity, they may feel unseen or misunderstood. They interpret your composure as indifference, even though it may actually be an attempt to create stability. This mismatch between expectation and response can create tension that is difficult to articulate. Jung spoke about individuation as the process of becoming whole by integrating both light and shadow. Individuals who have begun this journey often radiate a quiet self-assurance that comes from facing their inner conflicts rather than avoiding them. This self-assurance can be deeply unsettling to those who remain entangled in unresolved patterns. It is not that your peace is inherently provocative, but that it highlights the possibility of transformation. And transformation requires confronting aspects of the self that have long been hidden. Another layer of envy emerges when people interpret your calm as evidence that life has been easier for you. They may assume that your composure comes from privilege, luck, or emotional simplicity, rather than recognizing the inner work required to cultivate it. This assumption allows them to dismiss your example without confronting the effort it might take to develop similar qualities within themselves. The mind often protects itself by creating narratives that justify inaction. Social comparison plays a powerful role in shaping emotional responses. Humans instinctively measure themselves against others to determine their place within a group. When someone perceives you as emotionally stable, it can challenge their sense of identity. They may begin to question their reactions, their coping mechanisms, or their worldview. This questioning can feel destabilizing, and rather than exploring it openly, they may distance themselves from you to restore psychological equilibrium. Your calmness may also invite deeper conversations that some people are not prepared to have. A peaceful presence often creates space for introspection, and not everyone is comfortable with introspection. They may prefer interactions that remain on the surface, where humor or distraction can prevent deeper emotional exposure. When your demeanor encourages sincerity, it can feel like an invitation to vulnerability. Those who fear vulnerability may respond with avoidance or defensiveness, interpreting your presence as emotionally demanding even when you say very little. There is a subtle form of envy that arises from witnessing someone who appears self-sufficient. Many individuals rely on external validation to maintain their sense of worth. When they encounter someone who does not seem to depend heavily on approval, it can challenge their understanding of connection. They may feel unnecessary or unsure of how to relate. This uncertainty can manifest as withdrawal or criticism, not because they dislike you, but because they do not know how to position themselves in relation to your independence. The tension between inner peace and unresolved conflict often reveals itself in small, everyday interactions. A casual disagreement may escalate unexpectedly because your calm response feels foreign to someone who expects emotional escalation. They may interpret your measured tone as condescension or emotional distance, projecting meanings that are not present. The gap between intention and perception widens, and the relationship becomes strained without a clear cause. Jung emphasized that the shadow is not inherently negative, it contains untapped potential and suppressed strengths. For many people, peace itself resides in the shadow because they have learned to associate calmness with vulnerability. When they encounter you, they glimpse a quality they have pushed away. This glimpse can be both inspiring and painful, as it reveals a path they have not yet chosen. The psyche may respond by rejecting the source of this reminder rather than integrating the quality itself. Your presence may also disrupt collective emotional patterns within groups. If a community thrives on shared grievances or constant urgency, a calm individual can unintentionally challenge the emotional cohesion of the group. Others may feel that your composure threatens the bond they have built around shared struggle. To preserve that bond, they may subtly exclude or criticize you, reinforcing the group's emotional identity. At times, people interpret peace as a silent judgment. Even when you do not express criticism, your refusal to participate in negativity can be perceived as disapproval. This perception arises not from your actions, but from their internal dialogue. They may imagine that you see through their defenses, and this imagined scrutiny can create discomfort. Rather than exploring the origin of this feeling, they may distance themselves from you to avoid confronting it. The journey toward inner peace often involves confronting fear, grief, and uncertainty. Those who have not yet engaged with these experiences may feel unsettled by someone who has. Your calm suggests that transformation is possible, and possibility can be intimidating because it requires change. Change demands effort, vulnerability, and the willingness to face the unknown. The psyche, seeking stability, may resist by framing your presence as threatening or alien. In many ways, envy of inner peace reflects a deeper longing for wholeness. It reveals the tension between who a person is and who they sense they could become. Your calmness becomes a symbol of that potential, and symbols carry powerful emotional weight. Some will feel drawn toward it, seeking guidance or inspiration. Others will recoil, not because they reject peace itself, but because they are not ready to confront the path that leads to it. As you continue to embody stillness, it is important to recognize that the reactions you encounter are rarely personal in the way they appear. They are expressions of inner narratives unfolding within others, shaped by experiences you may never fully understand. The calm you carry does not create their conflict. It simply illuminates what already exists beneath the surface, inviting awareness that can feel both liberating and unsettling. There is a subtle misunderstanding that often surrounds kindness. Many people believe that being kind means being endlessly available, endlessly agreeable, and endlessly forgiving. Yet within the framework of Jungian psychology, kindness without boundaries does not represent wholeness. It reflects an incomplete relationship with the self. Individuation, the lifelong process of becoming psychologically whole, requires the integration of both compassion and self-respect. When one is present without the other, confusion begins to shape how others perceive and respond to you. Carl Jung spoke of the persona as the social mask we wear to navigate the world. For individuals who strongly identify with kindness, the persona can become overly polished, presenting an image of gentleness that hides inner needs, frustrations, or limits. While this may initially attract approval, it also invites misunderstanding. Others may interpret your silence as consent, your patience as unlimited tolerance, or your empathy as an invitation to cross emotional boundaries. The absence of visible limits does not create harmony, it creates ambiguity. Kindness without self-respect often arises from a fear of rejection. The individual learns, consciously or unconsciously, that being agreeable ensures connection. Over time, however, this pattern disconnects a person from their authentic impulses. Individuation requires the courage to acknowledge not only one's warmth, but also one's firmness. Without this balance, the psyche splits into opposing forces: the outwardly kind persona and the inwardly neglected self. This inner tension can manifest as exhaustion, resentment, or a quiet sense of invisibility. Jung emphasized that individuation involves integrating the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject or hide. Assertiveness, anger, and the ability to say no often reside in the shadow of those who define themselves primarily through kindness. They may fear that expressing boundaries will make them appear cold or unloving. Yet boundaries are not the opposite of kindness. They are the structure that allows kindness to remain genuine rather than obligatory. When boundaries are absent, relationships begin to rely on unspoken expectations rather than mutual understanding. Misunderstanding grows when others cannot see where you end and they begin. Human beings rely on cues to understand how to relate to one another. Clear limits communicate self-awareness and emotional maturity, while the absence of limits creates uncertainty. Some people may test the space you offer, not out of cruelty but out of curiosity about how far it extends. When no resistance is met, they may assume that their behavior is acceptable. Over time, this dynamic can lead to a pattern in which your kindness becomes a resource others consume rather than a quality they respect. Individuation calls for the development of an inner authority that guides behavior rather than relying solely on external approval. This authority emerges when you recognize that your worth is not dependent on how much you give. When kindness becomes a strategy for maintaining peace at any cost, it loses its authenticity. Others may sense this imbalance intuitively. They may feel that your generosity carries an invisible tension, as if you are offering more than you truly wish to give. This unspoken tension can create discomfort, leading them to misunderstand your intentions or question your sincerity. The shadow of self-respect often appears as suppressed anger. Individuals who avoid conflict may believe they are protecting relationships, yet unexpressed emotions do not disappear, they accumulate beneath the surface. Jung believed that what remains unconscious eventually shapes behavior in indirect ways. A person who never expresses boundaries may withdraw emotionally, become passive-aggressive, or experience sudden bursts of frustration that seem disproportionate to the situation. These reactions can confuse others, who may struggle to reconcile them with the image of perpetual kindness. Boundaries also play a crucial role in the process of differentiation, the ability to maintain one's identity while remaining connected to others. Without differentiation, relationships become enmeshed, and the individual loses a sense of personal direction. Kindness rooted in individuation acknowledges both connection and separation. It allows you to care deeply without dissolving into the expectations of others. When this balance is absent, people may project their own needs onto you, assuming that your role is to support, comfort, or accommodate them indefinitely. Jungian psychology suggests that the journey toward wholeness involves confronting internal contradictions. The individual must accept that it is possible to be compassionate and firm, open-hearted and discerning. This integration challenges cultural narratives that equate goodness with self-sacrifice. Many people grow up believing that asserting their needs is selfish, and so they suppress the voice that seeks fairness or reciprocity. Over time, this suppression creates a persona that appears endlessly kind but lacks depth, because it excludes the full range of human emotion. When kindness is not anchored in self-respect, it can unintentionally invite exploitation. This does not imply that others are inherently manipulative. Rather, it reflects the natural tendency of human relationships to follow the path of least resistance. If someone consistently prioritizes others over themselves, the dynamic may become imbalanced without anyone consciously intending harm. The absence of boundaries sends an unconscious signal that your needs are secondary, shaping how others engage with you. Individuation involves reclaiming the parts of the self that have been disowned in the pursuit of acceptance. For many, this means embracing the capacity to disappoint others. The fear of disappointing someone can be a powerful barrier to establishing boundaries. Yet disappointment is not always a sign of failure. It is often a natural consequence of authenticity. When you begin to express limits, some people may react with confusion or resistance because the familiar dynamic has shifted. Their reaction does not necessarily mean you are being unkind. It may simply reflect their adjustment to a new version of you. Jung described the tension between opposites as a catalyst for psychological growth. Kindness and firmness represent such an opposition. Holding both qualities simultaneously requires self-awareness and courage. It means acknowledging that love for others does not require the abandonment of oneself. When you communicate boundaries calmly and clearly, you invite relationships to evolve beyond superficial harmony toward genuine respect. This evolution may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if others are accustomed to your previous patterns. Misunderstanding often arises when people interpret boundaries as rejection. If someone has grown used to unrestricted access to your time or emotional energy, they may perceive your limits as a withdrawal of affection. In reality, boundaries clarify the terms of connection rather than diminishing it. They transform kindness from an obligation into a choice. When kindness is chosen freely rather than given out of fear or habit, it carries a different emotional weight. Others may sense this shift even if they cannot articulate it. The process of individuation also requires confronting the inner critic that equates self-respect with selfishness. This critic often echoes early experiences in which personal needs were minimized or dismissed. Learning to honor your own limits can feel like breaking an unspoken rule. The discomfort that arises during this transition is a sign that the psyche is reorganizing itself. As you integrate self-respect into your identity, your interactions begin to reflect a deeper sense of balance. Boundaries are not walls, they are expressions of self-knowledge. They communicate what you value, what you need, and what you are willing to give. When these elements remain undefined, others fill the space with their own assumptions. Clear boundaries reduce the likelihood of misunderstanding because they replace guesswork with clarity. This clarity does not eliminate conflict, but it transforms conflict into an opportunity for growth rather than a source of hidden resentment. Kindness rooted in individuation invites mutual responsibility within relationships. It acknowledges that both parties contribute to the emotional dynamic. When one person consistently overextends themselves, the relationship becomes asymmetrical. The other person may unconsciously rely on this imbalance, reinforcing a cycle that feels stable but lacks authenticity. Introducing boundaries disrupts this cycle, encouraging both individuals to engage more consciously. Jung believed that the path toward wholeness involves embracing paradox. You can be gentle without being passive, generous without being self-neglectful, and compassionate without abandoning your own needs. These paradoxes challenge the simplistic notion that kindness must always be soft or accommodating. True kindness includes honesty, even when honesty creates temporary discomfort. It includes the courage to say no, not as an act of rejection, but as an affirmation of personal integrity. The fear of being misunderstood often prevents people from expressing boundaries. They worry that others will misinterpret firmness as hostility, yet misunderstanding already exists when kindness lacks self-respect. Others may perceive your silence as indifference, your patience as weakness, or your generosity as an attempt to gain approval. By integrating boundaries into your behavior, you provide a clearer framework for how you wish to be seen and treated. Individuation is not a destination but a continuous unfolding. As you grow, your understanding of kindness evolves. It shifts from a strategy for maintaining harmony to an authentic expression of who you are. This authenticity may challenge relationships that were built on previous patterns, but it also creates space for deeper, more balanced connections. The individuals who resonate with your integrated self will appreciate the clarity and stability that boundaries provide. The relationship between kindness and self-respect reflects a deeper dialogue between the conscious and unconscious mind. The conscious desire to be compassionate must be balanced by the unconscious need for autonomy. When these forces align, behavior becomes more coherent and grounded. Others may initially react with surprise or uncertainty, especially if they are accustomed to a version of you that prioritized harmony above all else. As boundaries become part of your presence, misunderstandings begin to reveal themselves more clearly. Some people may step back, unsure of how to relate to the new dynamic. Others may move closer, drawn to the authenticity that emerges when kindness is paired with self-respect. These shifts are not signs of loss, but indications that relationships are reorganizing around a more truthful expression of who you are. Individuation invites you to stand at the center of your own life rather than orbiting around the expectations of others. From this center, kindness becomes an extension of inner balance rather than a means of securing acceptance. Self-respect anchors your generosity, allowing you to give without losing yourself in the process. The more integrated you become, the less you need to prove your goodness through endless accommodation, and the more your presence communicates quiet clarity about where compassion ends and personal truth begins.